welcome back to another episode of Credential. Justine Fernandez alongside Jillian Mealy. And I think we've all had times in our lives where we didn't feel that confident. A few of you reached out to us asking us, how do you overcome insecurities or imposter syndrome? And Jillian, first and foremost, I want to say that I think there's a misconception that if you are on TV, you don't get insecure. You always feel confident in your skin. And that's certainly not true for me. And I'm going to venture to guess not true for you all of the time either.
Not true at all. And there's also a misconception that when you're on TV, oh, it's just so easy. You have people doing your hair and your makeup and giving you clothes and all this stuff, and you look great all the time and blah, blah, blah. Also not true. Can be true in some circumstances, mostly not true. So I will say that yes, it is nice to sort of be in a job where you're forced to get up, do your hair, makeup, make yourself feel good. Okay. Because at the end of the day, I think we all feel better when we look nice, or at least when we feel like we look nice. But you don't always feel that way. I can't tell you how many times I was on TV feeling like I didn't look my best, not feeling my best, being insecure because of pick a reason, any of them A to Z. I, like most people, am insecure about a lot of things. And I don't know if you feel that way too, Justine, but it can be varying depending on the day. It can be, oh, I don't like how my hair is laying today, therefore it's making me feel like I'm ugly. Or, oh, my makeup isn't working out, and so I feel like I kind of look awful, and so it's making me feel insecure. Or it can be deep rooted, and I don't know if you've ever felt this way, Justine, but I have like this deep rooted insecurity that no matter what I've accomplished, successes I've had, what I've done in my career, for some reason, I have this insecurity that like I haven't done enough, that it just isn't good enough for some reason. And I don't know why that is, but I think everyone at some point feels that way.
Yes. And I think what the thing with TV is you do in some ways put on this confident persona because you need to sound authoritative. You need to sound like you have command of the topic. And yes, you are usually trying to look your best when you know that you're going on live television. And sometimes you may be getting hair and makeup help. In my current role, when I'm freelancing TV, you're looking at the hair and makeup artist. But what I think is really important here is like, how do you then go do that and look that way and power through when you aren't feeling as confident in your own skin? And these could be physical insecurities. These could be more deep rooted ones, like you talked about, of not feeling successful enough. And then somehow I think when you push through, you get to this other side of those insecurities become smaller and smaller and smaller.
They do. And I will say sometimes those deep rooted insecurities don't really go away fully, but I think you can make progress in feeling better about them. For instance, the one I talked about where for some reason I just never felt like it was good enough, that I was I even have a hard time explaining it because I think it seems so silly. So many people I've said this to, and they're like, you are crazy. Like, how could you ever feel like you haven't done enough or you haven't been successful in what you've done? I do feel that I've been a very accomplished person in my career, that I've been very successful in my career. So on one hand, I feel that way, but on the other hand, there's this insecurity that's like, yeah, but no, maybe you could have done better. Or no, maybe you could have done more. Or maybe there's still something else out there for you to do. And so for me, I've sort of turned it into most days. I can think of it not as a negative. Most days, I can think of it as there's still more work that I can do. There's still something else that I can aspire to do, that I can do better maybe. And so I turn it into this search of, well, what haven't I accomplished yet? And what is there still for me to accomplish? And I think that for me anyway, that feels like a healthier way to approach it rather than just looking at it like, well, you're not enough or you haven't done enough. Does that make sense?
It does. You turned it into from a negative to a positive of like, let's use this to go explore some new things. And maybe I don't have to be perfect at them. And I'm going to take satisfaction in the fact that I'm trying new things rather than I have to be the top of my game in every single thing and facet of my life.
Yes. What about you? What would you say is yours?
I would say that I think in periods of my life, I've felt insecure or I've maybe even have had like what you would call imposter syndrome. I know when I made the big transition from local news to New York City, it is a big market. It's a lot of eyeballs. And not only that,
Mm,
but you're living in a city that I grew up in the Midwest. I was like, can I handle New York? So when I made that transition from local news to sports in a very big market, I had a lot of imposter syndrome for a long time of am I knowledgeable enough in sports? I love sports. I grew up around sports. I played lacrosse in high school.
mhm.
But, I had a brother who played college football. His sports knowledge is out the wazoo compared to mine because, of course, I'm not taking snaps in an actual college football game.
You're
So I
not?
had a lot of
What?
doubt. I had a lot of doubt of like, am I good enough? Do I know enough? And then can I handle New York City? And so when I came into that, it was just kind of I had to do it. So I had to give it my best. I had to just every day keep getting the reps and then keep upskilling in places where I didn't know. Like I was not an expert in New York sports and like some of the backstories because I didn't grow up there.
Yeah.
So I didn't know some of the Jets backstories, things like that, or the Mets backstories. But I think upskilling myself outside of the job and then also just getting the reps in the role, getting comfortable, and for lack of a better way to put it, like pushing through it to the point where I didn't feel like an imposter anymore. I got command of the content and of living there. And you get to a point where you're like, yeah, I can do this.
I could do this. Yes. And you did very well.
Hmm.
And I had similar feelings when I went to New York too. I was working in political news and it was something that I had never been a part of. And there was a big learning curve for me. And still to this day, I give myself, it's a great source of pride for me, actually, that I look back at my time where I did have that imposter syndrome a little bit because you're like, okay, there are so many people in this world who have been in this world a lot longer, who know more than me. But I looked at that and I took it and I was like, well, then I am going to learn as much as I possibly can because I am going to go on TV being as fair as I possibly can, as journalistic as I possibly can, as factual as I possibly can. I put that pressure on myself to say, okay, sure, maybe there's a little bit of insecurity here or imposter syndrome here, but let's turn this into something that is going to make me that confident person who knows what she's talking about, who can
Hmm.
go on and have all of these conversations and not self doubt. Because when that self doubt creeps in, I think that's when people can get into trouble because it sort of messes with your mind a little bit. And I think that goes across the
Hmm.
board for any scenario.
It sure does. And I think in what you were speaking to, two phrases that I have come back to over and over again, both in my television career and just my life and navigating a career and making a professional name for myself. The first is that confidence comes from doing the work.
Yeah.
So if you've put in the prep time, for me, it was live in games. I would be really nervous before being the field reporter, fill in field reporter for the New York Mets. If I
Mm-hmm.
did the homework ahead of time, once I showed up to the game, I told myself, I did the work. I've earned the right to be confident, and I'm going to leave the insecurity and the anxiety to the best of my ability at the door. And then the second thing is, Jillian, I've talked about it here before that faith is a part of my life. I
Yeah.
literally, before live shots, if I was really nervous, and I didn't get nervous every day, this would be for one of those more elevated opportunities. I would say to myself in my head, God has given me the grace to handle this because I truly believe God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, if you are there, you have earned the right to be there. You are there for a reason. So you're going to make it through and you'll be okay on the other side of it. But those are two little like self-talk things that I do
Yes.
that really like helped me when I didn't feel secure and I didn't feel super confident.
And the other thing that I came to a little bit later in my career was you're hired for a reason. They or someone sees something in you that maybe you don't see in yourself yet, but that you are here for a reason. You have this job for a reason. You beat out everyone else for a reason. It is yours. And it is normal to feel nervous or stressed or anxious in certain situations. And we've actually talked about this before. Maybe trying to think of those nerves or that anxiety in certain situations as your body preparing itself to handle the moment. So I think the
Mhm.
sooner you recognize that it's normal to feel those things and to feel certain ways. And I started to think that even just a few years ago. Like that's when I really sort of grasped that, when I realize and I think about everyone at some point feels the way I'm feeling right
Mhm.
now,
Mhm.
it doesn't make it seem quite as scary.
No, it really doesn't. And I get the same thing. I speak to a lot of like corporate audiences, and I think people think I'm not nervous, and I get nervous just like everybody else. But to
But you wiggle
remind
your toes,
yeah, but I wiggle my toes, which we
as
talked
we
about on
learned
another
about in a prior
episode.
episode.
But like you said, knowing that there's other people who feel nervous and who may feel uncomfortable, it kind of is this like leveling of the playing field that you're like, all right, it's going to be all right.
What a, what about personally? Because I feel like, especially as a female in this time that we're in with social media, and we touched upon it on a social media episode before, where everybody's giving their best and looking their best online for the most part, and it's hard to not compare yourself to
Hmm.
others, to how you look, your body, items that you might have, materialistic things, someone's car, someone's house. It's really hard to sort of escape that in your mind totally. I don't
Hmm.
know about you, but I've always been a fairly confident person when it comes to my person. But I do have a lot of insecurities. Physically, I have insecurities.
Yeah.
I'm always, when I walk into a room, I'm like, oh, like, do I look okay? Am I appropriately dressed? Like, is my hair okay? And
Hmm.
it's like kind of those checks and balances, I think, as a female, you kind of go through. But I think when you openly have these conversations with people like we're doing now with friends, and you realize again, everyone feels that way, that it's okay to feel that way. But what's the healthy balance between, I guess, being okay feeling that way sometimes and not letting yourself get too involved in it where it takes over your
Hmm.
mind?
I think it's really difficult with social media right now because it's
Yeah.
prioritized. Well, one, some of the images are edited, so people do not really look like that. And while I think it's hard on both men and women, it's especially hard on women and especially
Yeah.
hard on how women look, their bodies. And like, look, I'll be honest, my body does not look like some of those women, and it may never. Like I could not eat for 2 years and I still would not look like that. And
Yeah.
so, or I could go pay X amount of dollars for a lot of surgeries. I'm not sure. And there's nothing wrong with those women. Like they feel great in their own
Yeah.
skin. They're beautiful. Like I'm no disrespect to any of them. That's just not me. I'm more petite, but I also have a very athletic build. I gain muscle really easily, which is a blessing and a curse. And I think for me, what I started doing, Jillian, is like I just don't go seek it out. Like I don't go look at it. Like if it's going to put me in a negative spiral, I don't follow those people.
Mhm.
I won't go look at those people's pages, and like, or if I catch myself like scrolling in the explore page, that to limit it. And then I think just to remind yourself, and even another thing is the aging thing. Like
Oh,
once
yes.
you've crossed that corner, once you get out of your 20s of like all of a sudden you are inundated with like we need to fight the clock and we need to do all these treatments and whatever, and when I catch myself in the spiral, I just try to get off the phone. I mean, really, if it's one
It's
small
so
step,
hard to, though.
it's because it's
You just said
those
something so
algorithms
crucial,
are
though.
designed to keep you on them.
They are, but you just said something so crucial, which is when I catch myself. It's that awareness thing that I think is key. And you just talked about, your petite yet athletic build. I am in the, literally, I'm not kidding you. This is a fact. I am in the worst shape of my entire life right now. My entire life. I have always been someone who has worked out. I've always gone to the gym. I've always, done cardio, done weights. Like I've just always been that person. I'm athletic. I golf, and I've always been involved in sports in some capacity. That's just who I've been. But in this last year, since starting a company, leaving my job, and still finishing my MBA program, Justine, I have just had, well, you know what? Maybe it's an excuse. I sit here and say I've had no time. Maybe I could have made time to work out or go to the gym. Mentally, maybe I didn't have time for it. Mentally, it's like you can only handle so many things on your plate at once. But
Hmm.
I am in the worst physical shape of my entire life. And I'm already like, okay, I'm gearing up. I'm going to be done school in a few weeks. Like, let's get back on this train. Let's get back on this horse. Like, girlfriend, you've given yourself enough time to sit there on that couch and have your head in the books. Snap out of it. Let's go. And you know what? I'm appreciating having this time, and I'm appreciating sort of reminding myself of the things that I like for myself. I
Mhm.
like to be in shape. I like to work out. I like to feel healthy. I like to make smoothies. All of this stuff, I've gotten so like in this bad space where I'm like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. I have so much stuff going on, and I have to finish school. And we can talk ourselves into that though forever. And
Mhm.
that's the scary part. So I think snapping yourself out of that sometimes can be really challenging.
If it makes you feel better, I did not prioritize exercise in my MBA. It just was honestly not possible. Like I just did not have
So I'm not
time.
alone.
I was under so much stress. I actually lost a ton of weight, but it didn't look good either. Like I lost all my muscle. It didn't look good.
I have
But
zero muscle on my body right
I
now.
mean,
Zero.
in the same way, do you feel like any sense of peace and that like you've been able to give yourself that relaxed time and
Yes.
focus time? Because I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, especially when it comes to how we look.
I agree. And I am glad that I gave myself the time, but I also know that I like feeling healthier. I
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
feeling a certain way. And this has been an interesting sort of lesson for me to learn. And by the way, I'm being very real with y'all about this right
Mhm.
now, whoever's listening. So I hope that you don't judge me for this. But I've learned that even though it might be hard to go to the gym after a long day, or it might be hard to wake up earlier to work out, I've learned through this experience of putting that on pause that I like how I feel better when I make the time to do those things. So
Mhm.
it's like a huge prioritizing the
Mhm.
things that are important to you lesson.
And I think the end goal that you mentioned is important there. And it's you are doing it because of how it makes you feel and because it's good for you. I think when you approach these sorts of things to like look like somebody else or just for like pure physical appearance, like that's the wrong way to like approach a healthy lifestyle.
Yes, I agree. So maybe in 6 months or something, I'll become like a bodybuilder or something. I don't know. Stay tuned. We'll see.
See, to me, it seems like it's quite a lift. So I just like don't know if I have the time and the commitment.
I know. Well, the time thing is a very real thing, but I think we can also use the time thing. And I'm not saying you, or I'm not saying everyone out
Hmm.
there. I've certainly used it, not always, but sometimes. I think we can use the time thing as sort of an excuse to like push
Hmm.
things off sometimes. I've been guilty of that. And so that's why I'm like, okay, I have a priority now, and being more physically fit to make myself healthier and feel better is going to be a priority. Once school is off that table, once school
Hmm.
is off the
Hmm.
plate, it is off the list, it is done. And you know what? Sometimes you have to make decisions, and that's
Yeah.
okay too.
Yep. I have another question. It's an insecurity that I think is not talked about enough. And it's about the stage you are at in life. You mentioned
Oh,
being at the right level of your career. For
yes.
me, I was insecure for a very long time because I saw friends of mine getting married, having kids at a certain age. And I was like, I'm behind. I'm behind. I haven't met anybody. I was like insecure and battled the insecurity of that for a very long time. Did you ever feel that way? And like, how did you overcome? Like, we hold ourselves to the standard of we should have accomplished X by Y time frame in our life.
I think that there is this thought process. This might be diving deep right now, but I think there's this thought process that, oh, you're a woman, so you should be married by a certain time. You should have kids. I get messages on social media all the time. What's wrong with you? Why don't you have a family? Why don't you have kids? First of all, I'm not going to confirm or deny on here because it's no one's business that I can or can't have kids, right? So I think
Hmm.
that there's a lot of layers to these conversations, and it's very personal for people. So I don't like the stigma that you should be doing something or have certain things by a certain age. I hate that. Like, I despise that. I think to each their own. And if that's what you want, or that's what I want, or that's what the person, down the street wants, then that's great. I think that everybody should make those decisions for themselves. I will say it's been hard. I mean, I'm in a great relationship now, and I'm so thankful for that. And I know you are too. You just got married in the last few months. it took a long time to meet someone really great.
Mhm.
And I did start to feel insecure for a few years because you get questions all the time about, well, why are you single? And you kind of feel like people are like, well, what's wrong with you?
I got that
You know what
all
I
the
mean?
time of like, "How are you single?" And it's like, "Well, I've
Yeah.
been kind of busy."
I've been waking up at midnight, going to bed at 6 p.m. for 15 years, having no life on the weekends, falling asleep at my dinner table. Like, I'm not sure. Prince Charming wasn't coming knocking at my door. And if he was, then I missed him. So I think there's a big insecurity around that. And maybe it's not just women. I mean, maybe it's men
Mhm.
when you get to a certain age too, and we just don't know about it. So I welcome
Mhm.
that the comments and conversation. If anyone has any insight on that, I'd love to know actually if men feel that way as well.
I mean, I
But
do have
I
several male
definitely felt that
friends
way.
who are like really, really, truly coming from a very sincere place, like wanting to meet the right person. So
Oh.
while I vastly think it happened, time pressure is much more apparent for women. I think both men and women in kind of our general age range are all dealing with this because the paradigms are shifting too of like people are getting married later, people are having kids later. We now have really, really time invested careers, like careers now, like 40 hours a week is kind of going by the wayside. Like
That
careers are
doesn't happen. Yeah.
requiring a lot these days. So it's hard to like go meet somebody, build a partnership while you're establishing a career.
And we talked about this before, so and I know you wanted to talk about it. Maybe you can touch on your thoughts on it, but nowadays it's hard to be in that world and meet someone because there's so many dating apps and it's sort of especially we both lived in New York. And so and I don't know that the New York dating lifestyle's the same as it is all across the country, but in New York, like you would hear stories, and I didn't personally experience this, but you would hear stories of people having like a date lined up at like 5 p.m. and then one at like 10 p.m. And it's just you have the world at your fingertips now to meet as many people as you want. So I got to a place where it almost scared me a little
Mm-hmm.
bit because it felt like it was impossible to meet someone the good old fashioned way,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
in person organically, authentically. It felt like it got weird. And so I was like, I'm
Yeah.
exiting stage right all of this right now.
No, I used to call New York the Bermuda Triangle of boyfriends. New York is like its own animal where people just aren't that motivated to really truly connect with somebody in a monogamous, like deep relationship way. And there's many factors that I'm sure goes into that. I mean, and I think majority of people are meeting online these days and they aren't going out like either with their friends or whatever to actually meet people because they know when they get home or in their free time they can go on an app. I mean,
Yeah.
most people I know who are getting married or in a serious relationship, for the vast majority, met their significant other on an app. And it's a weird dynamic. Like, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah. I'm not I'm not a fan of it. But that's just, you know what? That's just me. I'm so old school. I always joke. I'm like, I should have been born in like the 50s. Like that's like how old school I am, especially with dating and meeting people. I don't know. I like the organic natural
Mm-hmm.
story. Like I like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, we were out and he or she or someone came up to the other person and
Oh,
started
I
a
know.
conversation. Like it takes nerve, to
It
do that.
does.
And I don't know. It's like online, you can just write a quick like, "Hey, how you doing?" And is that really like nerve-wracking for someone? I think it's cute when it
Mm-hmm.
takes a little courage.
They call that a meet cute, right? In a movie where
Yeah,
they
yeah, I
meet like
like
in the
that.
shopping mall or like in a grocery store aisle and strike up this conversation.
There's a reason I love the Hallmark Channel movies. Again, I'm being very authentic right now. It's because they're all like cute little love stories. I'm such a
Yeah.
romantic.
Well, I think we touched on a lot of layers of like overcoming insecurity. I guess before we say goodbye, any last tips of what you would tell somebody who maybe is feeling insecure? It could be about where they're at in life, it could be about how they look, it could be insecurity can take a lot of different
So,
phases.
and I, yes, so I'm not doing this today for this purpose. Even though I just got done saying I'm in the worst physical shape of my life, I feel great today. But so when I'm feeling physically insecure or just not feeling great, even, some days you wake up and you're like, I'm tired, like I can't shake this. If you're just
Mm-hmm.
not feeling great, what I usually do is throw on my brightest outfit because it I don't know, brightness to me, it like
Mhm.
cheers me up when I'm wearing something bright, and I'm wearing the brightest pink outfit right now. So I say I didn't do that on purpose, knowing we were having this conversation. But I like wearing something bright. I like being cheery, like wearing something that's going to make me happy or maybe make other people happy and make them smile. So that's definitely one of those like small ones. But I think bigger picture, it goes back to just recognizing that you're not the only one that feels this way. And sure, you're the one who feels this way in this moment or in that particular moment when you're experiencing something. But that just means it's just your turn and that everyone else has their
Mm.
turn. And knowing that you're going to be okay, you are
Mhm.
going to get through it. Or if you're not feeling great, maybe you're going down that rabbit hole of social media and comparing yourself to others, or maybe feeling insecure about someone else's relationship that they have, or someone else's things that they have, or job that they have, or whatever the
Mhm.
situation is. We can really control a lot of that. And it starts with our mindset. So I
Mhm.
think knowing that when you go down those rabbit holes, that you have the ability to be the one to control that and get yourself out of it. It's kind of like I said, I need to like snap myself out of
Yeah.
this, like, lack of working out
Mhm.
phase I've been in. Knowing you have the power and control and that it's okay to feel how you feel, but being aware enough to snap yourself out of it, I think is something that helps
Mhm.
me.
Mhm. And the positive self-talk, and also you've earned the right to be there. Jillian, I think we've said
Yes.
that both in so many ways. Like tell yourself, I've earned the right to be here. I wouldn't
I've
be
earned
here
it.
if I wasn't supposed to be.
Yes.
Well, great topic. We appreciate those who asked us to speak on it. Jillian and I can kind of gave our thoughts on how we've felt insecure, how we overcome that, and another great episode of Credentialed in the Books. I will see you for the next one.